Have you ever noticed that a plant wilts when it doesn't get enough water? But when plants are well watered, they can grow to be lush, full, and tall. Or have you ever noticed that you become thirsty after eating salty popcorn? And have you noticed that you breathe harder and your heart races when you exercise? You've probably had a cut or scrape at some time during your life. How does the wound heal so quickly? And what makes your fingernails grow? The answers to all these questions have to do with the activities of cells. During the next few minutes, we'll explore some of the processes carried out by cells, and we'll examine how the activities of cells affect our daily lives. These baseball players are using a lot of energy to hit, throw, and run. Birds exert plenty of energy to feed and raise their young. And these flowers also use a great deal of energy as they grow and reproduce. From where do all these living things get their energy? The answer is food. Cells take energy from food and change it into other forms of energy that they use to carry out activities. Metabolism consists of all the chemical activities that occur in a living organism. The cells in our bodies are constantly carrying out metabolism. For example, cells are growing and repairing themselves, absorbing food, creating proteins, reproducing, and getting rid of wastes. Now, let's take a look at how a special type of cell obtains the energy it needs for metabolism from the sun. Some living things, called producers, have the ability to trap the energy of the sun to create food. You decide. What type of organisms use the sun to produce their own food? That's right, plants. Plants and other plant-like organisms use energy from the sun through a process called photosynthesis. During photosynthesis, plants use energy they absorb from the sun to create their food. Photosynthesis is one of the most important processes in the world. Without photosynthesis, life as we know it would not exist. Life, in one way or another, depends on the process of photosynthesis. Plants use photosynthesis to make the energy they need to live, grow, and reproduce. And animals, either directly or indirectly, depend on the energy found in plants to carry out their lives. During photosynthesis, energy from the sun, along with carbon dioxide and water, is used to create simple sugars and oxygen. Plants and other plant-like organisms use pigments such as chlorophyll to capture light energy. Chlorophyll is found in structures called chloroplasts, like these, which are located inside plant cells. Chloroplasts are the places in plant cells where photosynthesis occurs. Chloroplasts are commonly green because they contain the green pigment chlorophyll. We just mentioned that many animals get the energy they need by eating plants. Plants contain different forms of chemical energy, which are produced via the process of photosynthesis. Animals, however, cannot produce their own food from the sun, and therefore must eat plants or other animals to obtain energy. Respiration is the process in which food substances are broken down and energy is released. You're carrying out the process of respiration at this very moment. Respiration is continuously going on in our bodies because we need a constant supply of energy. You decide. How do we resupply our bodies with energy? We resupply our bodies with energy by eating food and drinking liquids. Organelles called mitochondria are largely responsible for carrying out respiration in cells. There are two types of respiration: aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. Let's first take a look at aerobic respiration. During the past 10 seconds, you've taken a breath of air containing oxygen. The oxygen flowing into your body is essential to the process of aerobic respiration. The term aerobic is used to describe respiration that depends upon oxygen. Aerobic respiration involves the breaking down of food in the presence of oxygen. In aerobic respiration, simple sugars and oxygen are broken down into the energy we use to carry out our lives. In the process, water and carbon dioxide are also given off. When we breathe out, we give off carbon dioxide and water vapor. Let's now take a look at anaerobic respiration. Have you ever exercised so heavily that your muscles burn? You decide. What causes the burning feeling in your muscles? The burning feeling is the result of a buildup of acid called lactic acid. Lactic acid is a byproduct of anaerobic respiration. Anaerobic respiration involves the release of energy without the use of oxygen. Sometimes, when you engage in heavy exercise, muscles do not get enough oxygen and therefore start to produce energy anaerobically or without oxygen. Anaerobic respiration produces a smaller amount of energy than aerobic respiration. Fermentation is another type of anaerobic respiration carried out by some organisms. Yeast cells rely on the process of fermentation to produce the energy they need. During fermentation, carbon dioxide is given off, as well as an acid or alcohol. This baker is putting yeast into this bread dough. Over a few hours' time, the yeast cells carry out the process of fermentation and carbon dioxide is given off. It's carbon dioxide gas that causes the bread to rise. Fermentation is also used to make root beer, giving the drink its fizziness. We've talked a lot about cells gaining and releasing certain materials, but how do these materials move in and out of the cell across the cell membrane? To demonstrate how materials enter and exit the cell, we can use this mesh bag to represent the cell membrane. Notice that the bag has small holes in it. The holes are small enough so that larger rocks cannot exit the bag, but the holes are large enough to allow sand to exit. A cell membrane is similar in that some materials are allowed to pass through it, while others are not. This is referred to as selective permeability. You decide. What will happen when we drop this food coloring into this beaker of water? As you can see, the food coloring spreads throughout the container until it eventually colors all of the water. This process is called diffusion. Diffusion involves the movement of molecules from an area of greater concentration to an area of lesser concentration. For example, while this apple pie is cooking in the oven, its smell slowly fills the oven and the rest of the kitchen. Diffusion is very important in cells. It's the driving force behind the movement of substances in and out of the cell. For example, the molecules from digested food outside this cell are in an area of higher concentration than the molecules on the inside of the cell. Therefore, food molecules flow across the cell membrane from a place of high concentration to an area of low concentration. But not all molecules can flow in and out of the cell via diffusion. This is because the cell membrane is selectively permeable, only allowing some molecules to pass through. What do you need to do to fill this glass with water? By turning on the faucet, the glass becomes full of water. Similarly, cells gain water by allowing it to flow from an area of higher concentration outside the cell to an area of lower concentration inside the cell. This process is called osmosis. Osmosis is the diffusion of water across a cell membrane. For example, this cell is surrounded by salt water. There's a lower concentration of pure water outside the cell than inside the cell. Water flows, therefore, from inside the cell to the outside, causing this cell to shrink. What's the quickest way to remove the smoke from this burned toast out of the kitchen? That's right, turn on a fan to transport the smoke outside. Active transport occurs in much the same way. Unlike osmosis, sometimes materials move from an area of low concentration to an area of high concentration. This is called active transport. It's harder for materials to move from an area of low concentration to an area of high concentration because energy is required to make this happen. You can think of active transport as a hill, with the top of the hill being an area of higher concentration than the bottom of the hill. When you ride a bike down a hill, there's no need to pedal or expend any energy. But if you were to ride your bike from the bottom to the top of the hill, you'd have to use a great deal of energy. The cell theory tells us that all cells come from other cells. How does this happen? Have you ever held a little baby? You might notice some obvious differences between the baby and you. For example, a baby is smaller. Its arms, legs, and feet are little, and it weighs much less than you do. You decide. How do babies grow into adults? The answer is cell growth. Our bodies must produce more cells for our bodies to grow larger. Cells themselves can grow only to a certain size. Then they must divide. The splitting of a parent cell to make two new cells is called cell division. How is it that this baby elk can grow to the size of its father in a matter of months? Rapid divisions add to the body mass of the elk. In the process of cell division, whether it occurs in a leaf, a cow, or a bear, new cells are created from a parent cell and are therefore identical to the original parent cell. The process of cell division occurs in a series of stages called mitosis. In mitosis, two new daughter cells have the same genetic makeup as the original mother cell and therefore look identical. During the past few minutes, we've looked at many of the different processes cells undergo. We explored how cells carry out the process of metabolism. We also looked at how plants and other plant-like organisms capture the energy of the sun to produce food through photosynthesis, and how organisms that cannot produce their own energy generate it from food through respiration. We also looked at how cells transport materials into and out of their membranes through diffusion, osmosis, and active transport. Finally, we saw how cells grow and duplicate through cell growth and mitosis. So, the next time you exercise, look at a plant, or hold a baby, think about how all these things are affected by cell processes. You just might look at your world a little differently. Fill in the correct word when you hear this tone. Good luck, and let's get started. Number 1. All living things need to live. Number 2. Describes all of the chemical activities that occur in an organism. Number 3. Allows plants to convert energy from the sun to make food. Number 4. Are the structures in plant cells where photosynthesis occurs. Number 5. Food is broken down and energy is released in the process of. Number 6. Respiration involves the breaking down of food in the presence of oxygen. Number 7. Anaerobic respiration occurs. Oxygen. Number 8. Is the diffusion of water across a cell membrane. Number 9. Moves materials from areas of low concentrations to areas of high concentrations. Number 10. A mother cell divides into two identical daughter cells.